You should, by all means, encourage the soldiers to continue in the service. This you can easily do by testifying great esteem for old soldiers. They do that very well in the military. You know, the older, more experienced veteran soldiers get a lot of respect. Mm-hmm. The pay should also be increased in proportion to the years in service. There is a great injustice in having no higher pay to a veteran than to a recruit. So that's good. Now, when I read this didn't particularly strike me as an important maxim to bring up, but it reminded me of a story that always stuck with me. And so I was over in Ramadi, and I was working with a battalion called the 1st of the 506, Band of Brothers.
Sure.
Red Currahee, just unbelievably awesome and heroic soldiers. And I went over there for a meeting with the commander of the battalion. And I showed up to the meeting early. Of course, I was meeting him in his office, and this guy was just an incredible leader and an incredible soldier and really an incredible man that I could not have any more respect for. And, I'm not saying his name right now because I don't want to interrupt his privacy and his world. I don't know if he wants to have his name said on a podcast, and we talk about him in the book, and I don't put his name in there either. And again, this is out of respect for people's privacy and also out of, security reasons. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to have the insurgents and terrorists of the world knowing that he was this guy. So, but I will tell you this, the guy was just a fantastic leader. And so I went to this meeting with him. This is just a one-on-one meeting. I forget what we were talking about. But I showed up early, and he's in there, and I can hear him. He's kind of talking to a soldier. I can't hear what he's saying. And there's just a soldier. And what's interesting about this is the Army, in the SEAL teams, when you join a SEAL platoon for 2 years or whatever, however long it's going to be, you stay in that SEAL platoon, you do a workup cycle, and then you go out on deployment. Mm. And the Army does a little bit differently. The Army, you could be 3 months into a year-long deployment to Iraq, and they will just they'll just leave. That'll be their time. Their time in the Army is up, and they'll go home. And then some new guy will show up, and they'll be in the middle of deployment, and that's how they do it. The SEAL teams doesn't really do that. You kind of stick together for an entire straight 6 or 7 month deployment. Mm-hmm. So I show up to this meeting with the battalion commander, and the soldier that was in before me walks out, and the colonel, I sat down, I said, "Hey, sir, how you doing? Good to see you." And he's like, "Hey, good to see you, Frogman." And he said, that right there is a soldier's getting out of the Army. And I said, "Oh, it's interesting how you guys do that." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "What do you say to these guys when they're getting out of the Army and it's the middle of a deployment?" And he looked at me and he said, "When I deal with a soldier that's getting out of the Army," he said, "a lot of people will say, 'You can't leave us now. You got to stick it out with us. You got to stay here. We need you." And he said, "When I deal with a soldier that's getting out of the Army, I look at them and I shake their hands and I say, 'Thank you for your service.'" Mm-hmm. And that to me was just awesome to have a totally different attitude, because the SEAL teams is like that as well. If someone's going to get out of the SEAL teams, they're not going to be on the middle of deployment, but when you get back, they'll, "Oh yeah, I'm getting out." Mm-hmm. And everyone says, "Oh, you're a quitter, blah, blah, blah." And it's just a different attitude. And what does that tell you about your community when you say, "Hey, you know what, I'm going to move on. I'm going to take care of my family. I got to, I got whatever going on in my life, and I'm going to get out of the SEAL teams." And people are like, "Oh, you're a quitter." Mm. And that's normal. And they do that in every branch. It's not just the SEAL teams. And here was this guy, and his attitude was, he's going to say, "Thank you for your service. Appreciate everything you've done. And I wish you the best luck." That guy is more willing to change his mind because he's like, "Wow, I'm working for an incredible leader. The Army's awesome."
Right.
And that story always stuck with me, about how to treat people, about how to treat people. This is a guy that put his life on the line for months on end. Mm-hmm. And all he did was just say, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
That's a leader right there.
Mm-hmm.